Welcome to Reverent and Rebellious, a safe space for faith-based conversations on the things that nobody seems to want to talk about these days. We are reverent, we value truth, we elevate scripture, but we are also rebellious. We shatter myths and we destroy dogma, so jump in. Join us, Logan, Pat, and me, the brother Peter, as we get reverent and we get rebellious. What's up?
What's up?
Looking for my umbrella.
Yeah, under my umbrella, Ella.
Nice.
Yeah, man, it was becoming a toad strangler today.
Man, it was. It absolutely was. What else do you call that? Well, I always used to tell my kids, it's raining cats and dogs today. Do you know how I know? They would say, how? And I'd say, because I just stepped in a poodle.
Nice.
Thank you.
Well, a gully washer, toad.
Gully washer, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good one.
All the creeks, what do they say, the creek, high creek, I don't remember, rising the creeks or something I've heard. I don't know. I can't think of all the old men that used to come and hang out up at the shop. I've always wished I could remember, what do they call that? It's not euphemisms.
It's kind of euphemisms, just slang terms, things like that. Yeah.
Some of them dudes would have a saying for everything. And I can't remember all that kind of stuff, but I wish I could, because man, it was great.
I am absolutely with you. I wish I could. And here's the funny thing is, because growing up on my mom's side, my grandparents and my aunts and uncles were all Scandinavian immigrants. So they had all of their own terms, and so I learned all of those when I was a kid. But my dad's side, they were all from Texas and Arkansas. So I got all the Southern slang and all that kind of stuff. And they were very, very different. Very different.
Do you remember any of the Scandinavian slang?
I can't remember right now. They just come to me out of the blue. And if I try to conjure them up, I usually can't do it. But
so that's why you like the Scandinavian nutcake so much.
I sure do. I absolutely do. I don't even know if that's Scandinavian. I'm pretty sure it's not, but
it sounds good.
Yeah.
It's funny too, because all of my the things, the foods, traditional Christmas foods, especially that I grew up with, they're very Scandinavian, and my family hates them, just violently hates them.
So you don't get to enjoy them at Christmas?
No, ever. I made one of my favorite things. They call it a Danish coffee cake, and it's this pastry around the, it's made in a 9x13, and this pastry, and then there's this custardy kind of, and then you spread the real sweet topping on the top, so you get the flaky and you get the the gooey, and then you get the sweet all on the top. And I just think it's the greatest thing in the world. And I made it one year, and my wife wouldn't even humor me by eating a piece of that stuff.
Wow,
well, it sounds good. I mean, what's the turn off on it?
I think it's a texture issue, because it doesn't. They've got no category for it, because if it's not pecan pie or chess pie or, something like that, it just doesn't make sense to their palate. And this has a very, pretty sophisticated layer of textures to it. And it's not like intensely sweet. And so it's like, no, we're not going to do it. There you go.
Well, so you just didn't make it again.
Did not make it again. I couldn't eat the whole thing by myself. And I thought,
I'll tell you what, you make one and me and Logan will eat it with you.
Okay.
I'll definitely try a piece for sure.
Yeah. I
got a sweet tooth from hell.
Well, me too. Man, it's always like, I finish up supper and it's like, man, sure could use something sweet right now.
I'm terrible, man. Growing up, my mom made dessert all the time. So there was always dessert in the house.
Yeah.
Marcy, she's a killer cook on it, but she just don't make it anymore, because we're trying to eat better and follow a better protocol. And I'm glad, I appreciate it. But
I know,
when we get dessert, I just slaughter it. I'm like,
yeah.
Man,
that's why you hang out at that Mount Zion bakery all the time.
It is, yeah. I go by there and get that cookie every Friday. Man, I gotta have that cookie.
That's worth it too. Absolutely worth it.
It is. Yes, it
So,
is. Well, I do. Before we get in too deep, we need to we need our listeners to do us a couple of favors. First, I need you to hit that like button, hit subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. Comment below. We also want you to go to Spotify, Apple, anywhere you're listening. Leave us 5-star ratings on there, and you'll get to hear us read the comments. I'm going to read. We got one comment on our last episode on Spotify, and then Pat will gloriously read any YouTube comments we got. So our Spotify comment from last week comes from my MVP sister-in-law, and that's Liz. And she
yeah.
said, if you're going to look at marriage and divorce rates, you also need to explore cohabitation rates and age at first marriage. I think what believers struggle with is that we can go through the religious practices and rituals, but the marriage still fails. Just because religious practices existed doesn't mean God joined it. Maybe that's just the story my mind is telling me.
No, and that's kind of one thing we were trying to get at too is, it's like, how could we have gone through a Christian wedding and it fails like that? Well, did you ask God beforehand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, is this truly, Brother Ron taught me this illustration, and I've used it every time I do premarital counseling. It's cheesy. It really is, but it really is true. He used the image of a triangle, right?
Mhm.
So here's the man, here's the woman, here's God at the top. The closer you get to God, the closer you get to each other. It's
Yeah.
just a pretty simple equation. And that is absolutely true. You can't just do your own thing and fall in love, all this stuff. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, we're going to get married in church. So God, will you please bless this? God's like, you didn't ask me to be involved from the very beginning.
Yeah.
So, you're on your own halfway. I mean, it's not that God's not going to help you, but you're just really getting started on the wrong foot. So I think that's a very insightful comment, honestly.
Well, and it makes me think of one of my really good friends. Him and his wife, they hit a very, very patchy part in their marriage.
Yeah.
And I mean, this was about, I guess, a little over a year or two ago now. And I mean, it was to the point like he had gone out and was looking at a house, and
Oh,
like
wow.
they were going to divorce. And he ended up and I may have shared this before. I'm pretty sure I've told you guys. I don't remember if it was off air or not. But the realtor actually ended up
Oh, yeah. I
asking
remember you
him.
saying this. Yes,
Yeah,
I remember now.
she asked him, why are you looking for this house? And he was like, well, me and my wife are getting a divorce. And she was like, I really hate to hear that. And again, this is literally the realtor. She's about to make whatever 15% or whatever off of this house deal. And she's like, well, can I just pray with you? I'd like to pray with you over this. And she said, I really hate to see you get a divorce. And she prayed with him. And like, it was such a shell shock to him that he literally went back, and him and his wife got involved in church, and they both started going. They went to marital counseling, and they like just totally devoted themselves to their faith like they never had before. And that was one
Right.
of the things. He was like, we did not have like a faithful marriage with God. He was like, we did got married in church and all that, but he's like, never went to church consistently. And man, now, I mean, he would tell you, I made some poor decisions, but he's like, our marriage is so much stronger now than it ever was. So, and they're very dedicated to their faith now. And so it's like, it makes sense.
It absolutely does. And I remember, I guess it was probably 15 years ago, I would go back to the statistics about, well, couples who live together before they're married. It used to be that the statistics were not very good if
Yeah.
you live together before you're married. Now, I don't think there is any couple that doesn't live together.
I was gonna say,
I mean, it's just the weirdest thing. Like
Yeah.
and I'm thinking, guys, and I'm talking Christian couples and everything. I mean, it's like, just get married.
Yeah.
I mean,
Good.
what are you trying to test out?
they live together, but they're not doing anything. You know, I
Oh,
mean,
that's right. Yeah, that's
yeah,
exactly
they
right.
have
Well, one
separate
person sleeps on the
rooms.
couch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they pull that couch out every night, and she goes to the bedroom, and he goes to the
Yeah.
couch. And
Yeah, it's like the old I Love Lucy. You know, they had
yeah,
the separate beds. I mean, that's how that's how they do that. I'm pretty sure.
yeah. The Dick Van Dyke Show. I remember
Yeah.
trying to figure that out when I was a kid. It's like, what? What are they doing?
Yeah, going to bed, man. Yeah,
Yeah. Any YouTube comments?
Yes, we got a few. Amber says, "Phew, I was getting a little nervous when I saw the title and content." She said, "As usual, fantastic episode, free indeed." Miss Julie, she says, "My husband listened to this real close since he's been divorced for the only reason God gave for it. You blew his mind, and that doesn't happen often."
There you
Last
go.
week's last week's show, I listened 3 times. This week, there's so much I've been through with that one. I personally can tell you that I have an inheritance run. It's not worth the stress. Folks and family go completely nuts. I agree with that.
That is
The
so
one
true.
thing I kept thinking is now we know why Jesus doesn't tell us when we're gonna pass, because some joker will want to go tell his family boomers are the hippie. Boomers are the hippie, the age of free love. I'm not surprised at all.
yeah,
Miss Debbie Baskin says, I'm with Amber. When I saw the title, I wonder how this was going to go. Get married in a barn, in a church, on a boat, married in the sight of God, and you're married. Sign the license and get the marital benefits per the state. Y'all still crack
Amen,
me up.
sister. Yeah,
yeah,
that's funny.
And then old Rhonda, she says, back when the boomers were becoming adults, the expectations were so high to marry. It really was the only option for women to get out of their parents' house. So they married, and later they divorced.
That Yeah, it is absolutely true, and that we're going to talk about that in an episode at some point. How the church is so focused still on marriage and children being the ideal, most godly, highest calling, all that stuff, and that's just not true.
yeah.
Because
Right.
I think Paul did pretty well.
No, not Paul. He didn't.
Pretty much Jesus did okay.
Nah.
Yeah, that's the funny one to me. It's like,
I know.
Because I'm the same. My mind immediately thinks about Paul, but it's like, well, actually, Jesus.
Yeah, go one level higher. Yeah,
we can
exactly.
we can kick that up a notch.
Yep, we
Jesus
certainly
was
can.
single.
Well, could you imagine being the wife of Jesus though? Like the wife
Ah.
burns dinner and looks at Jesus and goes, "Well, have you ever just really missed?" Never mind. I'll cook it again.
No, you have none.
Yeah.
He just goes, let me fix that. And he just like suddenly makes the steak like
That's
exactly.
exactly right. Yeah,
Pours the steak sauce on it.
yeah. He'd say, "Go fill that jar with water."
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that would be a tough marriage.
Yeah, no, that certainly could not happen.
She's like, you just think you're perfect, don't you? It's like, well,
as a matter of fact, yes, I do. Think
He could never hide anything from shopping.
no, yeah.
Exactly.
It's his birthday. Well,
I know your heart.
Yeah. Surprise! No,
Yeah.
no, not really.
I predestined that to happen.
That's exactly right.
Yes, this happened because he was elected to happen.
That's exactly.
You knew I wanted that jersey.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what? Well, I'm pretty pumped. Well, I guess before we get into the topic, you got to do something, Peter.
Oh well, yeah. I got to tell you a story.
You do?
I think I'll tell you 2 stories. An 80-year-old man rushes into his doctor's office, grinning from ear to ear. "Doc, you won't believe it. I just got my young wife pregnant." The doc leans back and he says, "Let me tell you a story. Once an old man went hiking and suddenly faced a charging lion. In panic, he raised his walking stick, pointed it like a gun, and the lion dropped dead instantly. The old man snorted. 'That's impossible. Someone else must have shot the lion.' The doc says, 'Exactly, sir. Now you understand.'"
I was going to say I knew where I could see it coming.
And here's a related story. Mom takes her 16-year-old daughter to the doctor. "Doctor, your daughter is pregnant about 4 months." Mom, "Impossible. She's never been with a man." Daughter, "I've never even kissed a man." The doctor looks out the window silently. "Doctor, what are you doing?" "Last time I heard this story, a star appeared and 3 wise men came. I'm not missing it this time."
Oh, that's good.
It is. I like
So there
those.
you go. A couple of slightly inappropriate stories to get us
Yeah,
started with a
we always
slightly
enjoy
inappropriate
those.
topic.
We
Yeah.
got to be a little rebellious.
Yeah, just a little
Well,
bit.
we're gonna get rebellious because
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
what is the wild topic that we're diving
Well,
into
we're
tonight?
gonna do a little series, and I thought this was gonna be I thought this would be fun because oftentimes we like to poke fun at the church because we're part of the church, and so we kind of have the right to do that, and we poke fun at church trends and roller coasters on stage, and all the fun things that churches do. But I wanted to do a little series. I don't know, but maybe 3 or 4 episodes on this. This is called "Off the Rails" when the church loses the plot, and this is basically going back in time to kind of look at where the church just really, really missed it.
Yeah,
So we'll talk about various different things, but what I wanted to get started with was I want us to talk about the Crusades. What do you know about the Crusades?
man. I'll be honest. I have like a fairly shallow knowledge of the Crusades. I mean, obviously, I learned about them in school, and y'all can see how much I paid attention and
Yeah.
remembered then. But I know that it was essentially I was telling Pat and Peter, I was always kind of brought up under the impression that the Crusades were inherently a good thing. It was essentially religious warriors fighting for their faith,
Yeah.
and there's elements of that that I still think can be in there, but there was a lot of atrocities that were committed, and some people would say those atrocities were committed in the name of God, like and it was basically wasn't it essentially Christianity versus Muslims
Yeah.
in the that I can't remember the time frame, but that's what it
It
was.
was the early 1000s
Yeah.
century. Um, Now, and here's a common thread that's going to play out through this whole little series is, it always starts with a reasonable or noble starting point.
Yeah,
Fairly good intentions. We think this is a problem we need to address. Let's go address it. There's a wrong that needs to be righted. Let's go right it. But then somewhere along the line, there are some misguided theology, shall we say. And we know this because we did a whole series on heresies, how easily and quickly we can sort of either misunderstand or take a view that seems preferential to us. And, like we always say, it generally ends up in getting naked at some point. Um, but there's sort of a skewed theology in there. And then there's all of these power dynamics, economic dynamics, all of these, things that you can slap the name of God on them and they sound kind of righteous and they sound kind of right. But, uh, when you start mixing politics and power and ambition and economics all in the mix, you can get off the rails pretty easily, pretty quickly.
See, this is
And
why I love the Crusades, man. Is because the Crusades, it's kind of like covert ops before it was covert ops.
for
Because like
sure.
this is
Yeah.
where we see secret societies like the Knights Templar come
Oh, yeah.
directly from this. We,
Oh,
we
yeah.
see Pope Urban II. He's the one who started the whole
Yeah. We're
shebang.
going to get into him. Man, what a character.
And that was a political move, and so it was pretty cool to see. Like even way back then, we still like we're doing this for the Holy Land. Are you really though? What is it really
Exactly,
about?
exactly,
see,
and
and I was a crusader for trunk or treat when I was about 12 years old.
see, there you go.
I
I
wore
love
I
that.
had the little armor, chest
Oh,
plate
man.
armor, and I had the
Yeah,
sword, and I went as a crusader.
yeah, you got, got a cross in one hand and a sword in the other.
You
Yep.
want to know what's really funny though? Is the biggest fallout from the Crusades was the ultimate uniting of the Muslim community.
Oh, absolutely, and the ultimate dividing of the Christian community.
Well, see, and that's what, yeah, in my, like, because I was kind of researching today when you said the topic, I started kind of digging into it a little bit. And that was one of the things, like, it said there are Christians that do believe the Crusades were good.
Yes.
And then there is Christians that firmly don't. And so it was like it ultimately created a split in like Christianity where like you had half of them that were like right on. We got to stop the spread of Islam and fight back. Because one of the things when I was kind of digging into this, it was like part of it was they were saying they were aiding their allies. The Crusaders were aiding their allies, and I mean, and we see it today. The rapid spread of Islam, like Europe, is radically changed by Islam, and I mean,
Yep.
I've had people today that are like, it's about time for another crusade.
Another crusade, I know. And your buddy down there in Mississippi, I mean, has been posting, nonstop, and I can't disagree with him. There's there's some very, very concerning things,
Yeah,
happening.
and
So
but like that was one of the big things I kind of, which I use my Claude and all that, and that's what I kind of was researching. And I told it, I said, give me the goods and the bads of the Crusades. And I like it because I said, give me the steel man
yeah,
like of
yeah,
it, and it gave really good things. Like
absolutely.
by the time it was done, I could see where kind of both sides can kind of come up with their stuff, but there was you can't acknowledge it without acknowledging that there was a lot of atrocity and bad that happened.
Yeah,
Um,
and it happened pretty quickly,
yeah,
honestly, and this is what we're gonna get into. One of the points I wanted to make, though, right off the bat is, this is for the non-believer or for the atheist, this is the dog whistle. It's like, "Oh, you wanna talk to me about Christianity? Well, let's talk about the Crusades. Let's talk about Christians marching across Europe and the Middle East, slaughtering Jews, Muslims, Eastern Christians, burning cities, massacring, all while shouting," and this was their slogan, "God wills it. Deus vult." And
Well,
it's like, "Oh, so that's your Christianity? That's the God you believe in? Okay, fine. Yeah,
just
great."
from a strictly debate standpoint, well, then we could say the same thing about Germans too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You can go, and we may do a whole episode on that. How the German National Church completely went off the rails. They just did. And this is the point I kind of want to get to, all while we're doing this, is there are times when the church cannot be defended. It just can't. It just swung and miss, and we
well, the
have to
Pope
be.
is a man.
Yes. It
That's a
still is, yeah.
he's a man, and that's the thing. Like I think just I'm gonna tell you, and we may have some Catholic listeners, and this might chap their butt a little bit, but um, just because the Pope says it, don't mean that it's rock solid to me.
Well, I don't know. The Pope's American now, so it might
I
make
know.
some sense.
Yeah, he's from like Boston, so he's probably a
Chicago.
little better. No,
Chicago.
Chicago.
Chicago,
Yeah.
Chicago.
Mhm.
No, but I mean, the church, the Crusades did one of the things it did show, and we've touched on this in the past, is the tremendous amount of power that the church wields, and the Pope specifically,
Yeah.
like how much power. And I would say not just, from a religious standpoint, but like political power and even to the point of military power. There was a lot of power that dude had.
Oh, absolutely. Um, and, when the church split, into Eastern and Western, Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic, I mean, it was already, they split over a very small doctrinal issue, but it was important enough to them to where they just could not exist together. But the whole crusade thing turned that into a great divide, and to where it was actual hatred at the time, which is they've come a lot closer together now, but even still, they won't hardly have anything to do with each other. Um, so, couple of couple of little notes about the Crusades is they are the single most cited historical objection to Christianity in secular conversation. It's like that's the one thing that everybody brings up.
Yeah.
Uh, and
It happened how many years ago?
well,
2,000 years ago or
yeah,
whatever?
yeah,
1,000
yeah,
years ago.
Yeah.
yeah. Interesting thing is, and I had this conversation one time. Somebody said, "Well, millions of people have been killed in the name of God," and I say, hundreds of millions of people have been killed not using the name of God.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
if you want to stack it up, yeah, you can
we're still
target
doing
this.
all right. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the score is not even. Let's put it that way,
yeah,
because far more people have been killed in the name of the devil, basically. Um, but interesting thing is, and Logan, you just touched on it. Most Christians have almost no historical knowledge of them,
Yep.
and so our answer to that usually is, "Well, that was a long time ago. We didn't know any better." And it's like, "Oh, really? Okay, okay." But but it comes back to those three ingredients: good intentions, corrupted by bad theology, accelerated by the pursuit of power and ambition.
Hmm.
That's generally how it happens. And that's how it is. So, what I wanted to do is to kind of back up a little bit and talk about the world right before the Crusades. Like, what was what were the ingredients that came together to kind of make this happen? Um, and uh, in the world of 1095 was kind of where it really came to a head. Um, the Roman Empire officially became Christian. Um, uh, something something shifted because Christianity went from a persecuted minority movement to the official religion of the most powerful empire on earth.
Hmm.
Um, the church grew in popularity, grew in status, grew in power, wealth, military force, and the immediate question was, what do we do with all this? Um, Christianity never had that kind of power. Christianity was always the persecuted minority, and so they had to kind of balance. Jesus says, "My kingdom is not of this world." Well, now their kingdom is of this world. So what are they going to do with it? And I think we're still wrestling with that question today, because we're still combining those elements
Yep.
to one degree or another.
Now, keep in
But
mind too, while this is going on in the background, the Turks had just invaded Anatolia.
yes, yes, and we will that will show up on our timeline in just a second. But I want to talk first about Augustine, our old friend Augustine.
Okay.
What do you know about the just war doctrine?
Not much.
What constitutes a just war? Because this has come up very recently with this whole squabble in Iran, um, or Iran. Sorry, um,
yeah. It's not Iran. It's
Iran,
Iran. Yeah.
Iran. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so Augustine developed this doctrine of a just war. So, what are the conditions under which Christians could participate in warfare? His original framework was just war required a just cause, defense against aggression, protection of the innocent. It also required right intention. The goal must be peace, not conquest or revenge. Um, it required proper authority declared by a legitimate governing authority. It must be a last resort, that all peaceful options had been exhausted, and it required proportionality. The harm caused must not exceed the good achieved.
Hmm.
That was like the deal breaker for Augustine. And so, but here's the funny thing: is it began as a moral restraint on violence, but by 1095, it actually became a theological permission slip. It's like, oh, okay. Well, as long as we can make everything fit these categories, then not only are we able to go to war, but we can say that God ordains it, and that's kind of the climate at that point.
See, and that was what I pulled up my little stuff with my notes here, and that's what this thing said. It said the strongest pro crusade argument is they were, at least initially, a defensive and religiously motivated response that people at the time believed was justified under their understanding of faith and war.
That's right, and that all went back to Augustine and his just war doctrine. They considered that to be the authority, and so they, you know how it goes. Well, how close to the line can I go without walking over it? And so that's kind of where they were. And this is complicated by, just like you mentioned, the Islamic expansion, and it was brought to a fevered pitch by the loss of Jerusalem. That was like that was the bright and shining moment. By the late 7th century, it says here, Islam had expanded with stunning speed across the Middle East, North Africa, and into Spain. So, from a Christian perspective, the Holy Land, the land of Jesus' birth, ministry, death, resurrection, was under Muslim control starting in 637 AD. It
Isn't
was,
it the same thing that Israel's still battling with
yes,
today?
absolutely, absolutely. It's never gone away. In and for a few hundred years, this was managed with pretty good amount of tolerance. Christian pilgrims were generally permitted access to Jerusalem. You could come and go as you please. But here you go. In the 11th century, the I don't know how to pronounce this. Seljuk, Seljuk,
Seljuk.
Seljuk Turks.
You
Yep.
roll with it, and we'll go with it.
Yeah, we'll just make it up as we go. They were a new and more aggressive Muslim power, seized control of Anatolia, which is modern Turkey,
Yeah.
and the Holy Land. So they started clamping down. Pilgrim routes became dangerous. There were constant reports of harassment, robbery, violence against Christian pilgrims, and it got back to Europe. And Europe was not happy about it. And now we bring in the Byzantine Empire, the Christian Empire of the East. They were supposed to be right after Rome. When Rome declined, the Byzantines were supposed to come in and just occupy, take over, pick up where Rome left off. But now, with the Muslim expansion, they were under severe military pressure and facing potential collapse. They were on the verge. So, in 1095, Byzantine Emperor Alexios Komnenos sent an urgent plea to Pope Urban II to send military help. So Urban, good old Urban, not Keith Urban, Pope Urban, saw an opportunity. And on November 27th, 1095, he preached what became the most consequential sermon in medieval history at the Council of Clermont in France. So I have an actual copy of this speech, of this sermon, I guess you might call it. And it's in little tiny font, and it goes on for a long, long time.
So Peter's about to read
Yeah.
the entire speech for you guys.
So
Right?
settle in, everybody. No, I'm not going to. But it's interesting because he kind of starts with, in the words of the gospel, "You are the salt of the earth. But if you fail in your duty, how, we ask, can it be salted?" And he goes on about that for a minute. He says, putrefied, if you are putrefied by sins and unsalted, you might be a stench in the nostrils when the Lord wills on some future day to address them. He's really starting to dig into this thing. And so then he says, if you wish to be the friends of God, do willingly the things which you believe to be agreeable to him. And he goes on to talk about all of the evils that are running rampant with this whole. And so then he says, wherefore I pray and exhort, nay, not I, but the Lord prays and exhorts you, as heralds of Christ, by frequent exhortation, to urge men of all ranks, knights and foot soldiers, rich and poor, to hasten to exterminate this vile race from the lands of our brethren, and to bear timely aid to the worshippers of Christ. I speak to those who are present, I proclaim to the absent, but Christ commands. And then he says, moreover, this is where it gets wild. And we'll get into this in a minute in greater detail, but he says, moreover, the sins of those who set out thither, if they lose their lives on the journey by land or sea or in fighting against the heathen, shall be remitted in that hour. This I grant to all who go through the power of God vested in me. Yep. So he goes on. It gets emotional after a while. He's talking about appealing to the well-being of your wives and your children. And, he's just really pulling all the strings. But basically what the sermon says is, Jerusalem is in the hands of infidels who defile the holy places. Christian brothers in the East are suffering and need help. God is calling the knights of Europe to take up this cause. Those who die in this cause will receive full remission of sins. And then the crowd responded with Deus vult. God wills it. And that's when it started. That was it right there.
That's what I was going to ask. Where did the because I'm thinking So did the Catholic Church have its own military? But I mean,
No,
he
he's basically, and he's not really calling on government military. He's just saying everybody who is concerned about this, if you're a knight, if you're a foot soldier, if you're a mercenary, if you can swing a battle axe,
Mhm.
you are obligated. That God is compelling you. You got to be salt and light. You can't sit there and become putrefied sin. Um, and so, as this thing gets going, if you, I mean, if you acknowledge honestly, the Byzantine Empire was under genuine threat. Its fall would have massive consequences for Eastern Christianity. Christian pilgrims were being harassed and endangered on their routes. Jerusalem did hold enormous spiritual significance for Christians, and the concept of coming to the defense of the vulnerable and persecuted was not inherently wrong. It wasn't. The problem was not that Christians cared about their brothers and sisters in the East. The problem was what they did next.
Yeah.
The problem was how they went about it. And so, this article here that I found is very, very complete. I'm really just going to hit the high points of it, but it identifies several theological errors, and this is the part that Christians really don't know anything about. This is almost like the meat inside the sandwich here. Uh, Theological error number one is that violence can be an act of worship. His sermon,
right on. I never knew that.
yeah, exactly. Um, this In his sermon, he basically says that that killing in this cause was not just permitted; it was meritorious. It earned grace. He's really pulling in the whole God's going to bless you kind of thing. He promised full remission of sins who took it up. Uh, Not just forgiveness of past sins, but a spiritual blank check for what they were about to do.
Yeah.
That's so. In other words, the point he's making in this article is this turned warfare into a sacrament.
Mm-hmm.
That I think is a key point. Um, Obviously, we know all of the New Testament verses that Jesus spoke that would contradict this. Love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. Do not take revenge. My kingdom is not of this world. All of this stuff. Um,
Well,
and
that
so,
was, that's what in my list of the bad on the Crusades, that was there. It gave like 5 or 6 reasons. The number 2 one is it contradicts core teachings of Christianity.
yeah,
That's what it
yep.
says. Critics argue using violence in the name of Christ to reclaim land or influence does not align with the spirit of those teachings.
And I would have to agree. I would absolutely agree. I think his sermon at its core was very misguided.
Yeah.
Uh, and it also, and we'll get into this later too, but the idea that a man can speak as God.
Yeah.
Well, when you say that, like, and I knew that they held the Pope really in ultra high regard,
Uh-huh.
but that was kind of my thinking. The fact that this dude is like, do this and your sins are forgiven, brothers, forever.
That's my job. That's
Yeah.
my
Look,
position.
FLDS does the same way with their prophets.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. He says he finishes this section by saying the Crusaders carried crosses on their chests and swords in their hands, and somehow never noticed the contradiction. So there you go.
It was a cruciform sword, so they were all right.
Yeah, exactly. So theological error number 2, that geography is sacred and worth killing for.
Right.
That's a big deal. Honestly, that's a big deal today.
I was just
Well,
about to say, isn't that again the Israel conflict?
Yep.
I mean,
it's
that's
funny is
literally
that is
fighting
this
over
shows
land.
this shows the hypocrisy, man, because it starts off, for the Holy Land, right?
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, it's not just the Muslim; it's the pagans too. Oh, it's
Oh
anyone who's
boy.
got a problem with the papacy. It's anyone who's got a problem with the Christianity. It's anyone who doesn't believe the same Christianity that we do.
This
It's
this is
it's a moving target.
this is where this is all going to lead. Um, and so the idea that land is somehow that Jerusalem is uniquely and physically sacred, and that Christian control of it was God breathed and a spiritual imperative. That's
All
I
right,
mean,
so then
Elijah's giving out wagons of dirt for free, man.
let me
yeah.
Like
ask you
I'm,
a dangerous question on
All
that.
right, go for it.
So, what would you say to people today that say, well, we got to protect Israel, because the Bible tells us we have to.
Yeah. I would say that the Israel we're trying to protect on a political level, whether that be a noble cause or not, I'm not against standing up for Israel at all.
Yeah,
But I think it's important to note that that is not biblical Israel. Biblical Israel is scattered all over the world.
You mean
And
biblical Israel didn't start in 1948?
Uh, well, some would say that it did, but that is a geopolitical um, nation state,
yeah,
and it is not necessarily God's chosen people. Now, should we turn our back on them? I don't think so. But for the reasons that we kind of claim, these theological reasons, that those things don't match up,
yeah,
because God said, "I will regather my chosen people." And honestly, that began at the day of Pentecost. So there you go.
yeah,
Jesus also said to the Samaritan woman, "A time has come now where you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem." Really, just kind of saying that the land may be important, but it is not spiritually, inherent. Um, and I know that's gonna mess some people up and make them mad at me just a little bit, but
Well, and I'm not trying to get you in hot water, but that is something. I mean, honestly, I think it's something people need to think about, because that's what I have had that conversation. And I mean, if you're going to get mad at Peter, you can get mad at me, because I've told people the same thing. I'm like, man, it's that when I hear, will protect Israel or whatever, like you said, I'm thinking of the people of God.
Yep.
Like, I'm not thinking, I don't think, and I'll tell you, I'll go a step further. What I tell people if they say something about that, I'm like, well, I also don't believe that God has to have the military power of the United States in order to
No,
protect. If
no,
he truly
no,
wants to protect Israel,
no.
like if it is that piece of land, he don't need our missiles. God can vaporize the planet at the snap of his fingers.
That's exactly
So
right.
that's
And they go back to the whoever blesses you, I will bless. Whoever curses you, I will curse.
yeah,
I would never in my world curse God's chosen people ever. And I don't want that, but and again, am I anti-Israel? Not at all. Not at all. I am very pro-Israel. I want Israel to flourish. Do I want it to just be a free for all and all that kind of stuff? No, I don't. But I think we have to just accurately see it for what it is,
Mhm.
and be very careful with how we kind of throw around those Old Testament promises. So there you go.
Fact.
Um,
if you have hate mail for Peter,
Yeah,
direct it to
it's
me.
okay. We can. I'm wide open to conversation about that all day long. No problem. I just, again, I would never disparage the nation of Israel or the people of Israel. Not in a million years. But I will also say that every human is an image of God. So there's that. Um, so um, then we get to theological error number 3. This is a very key factor. Theological error number 3 is the enemy is less than human. Um, yeah, and this is something that we're really wrestling and grappling with today, because it's the dehumanization. If we can dehumanize somebody, then we can eliminate them without any pricking of our conscience.
Right.
Um, and this is what this article says too. It says, for the Crusades to work psychologically, for ordinary Christians to march thousands of miles and kill people they'd never met, the enemy had to be dehumanized. And this is what Pope Urban does in his sermon. He calls them the vile race,
Yep.
um, and servants of demons. He says polluters of the holy places. So it not only makes then a free for all against Muslims imaginable, it makes it noble and praiseworthy
Yeah.
and godly.
Now,
Um,
is that a Pat? You remark on this. Is that a military strategy? Because I read Chris Kyle's book, American Sniper, when he got retired before he was killed. I read his book, and right out the gate, he calls them repeatedly savages. That's all. That's how he refers to them the whole
Yep.
book. And
You ask any veteran, veterans come out two ways. All right, you got people who drank the Kool-Aid and people who didn't. And it's so funny, as you know, as we're sitting there talking about people going through these Old Testament prophecies and saying that America should always defend Israel and all that. I'm just neither here nor there. But here's what's funny: is when we talk about like veterans, right? Like people say, "Well, this guy's burning a flag in the streets of America," and I'm like, "Well, I fought for that right too." I don't
Yeah,
agree with it. I don't say that, yeah,
I would
you
never do
should
it.
do
Yeah.
that, but he has the right to do it.
Well,
Yeah.
You know, like
um,
if we start picking and choosing who can do what based off our beliefs,
yeah.
then were you really fighting for your country or fighting for yourself?
Well, and again, I think you have to sort of reconcile and justify what you're about to do in some way. Back in the late '70s, in high school and all that, we read a lot of stuff about the Vietnam War. I mean, it was just a lot of material out. And one of the things that one of the books that I read was a journal of one of the soldiers, and it
Hmm.
was, man, it was chilling. It was a
I,
tough
I
read.
I give you a prime example. You remember the big outrage about people kneeling during the national anthem in the NFL?
Yeah,
All right, how come no one said anything about all the little turd heads on their cell phones during the national anthem?
I know. I know.
You know, it's like you kneel, you're protesting, but yet the flag goes up and I'm doing this.
Yeah, I
You
know.
know, it's the same thing,
I
man.
know.
I
But
get irritated by both of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's the
the
same thing.
but the interesting thing is they immediately begin to refer to the Vietnamese people, especially the army, as gooks. They were all
Yep,
gooks.
yep.
Uh,
Same,
uh,
same. World War II, same thing with the Japs.
yep,
The Japs became gooks and all kinds of things.
yeah, and immediately when you put them in that category, then you feel better about eliminating them.
Well,
Well,
Um,
what's
in
funny
war,
though is
weren't
the
they mooch? Didn't y'all call them mooch or something, Pat?
only thing that benefits is making sure innocent people get hurt.
well, here's the point that he makes in this article is that they were originally targeting Muslims, but then it expanded it immediately expanded to Jews who killed
Yep,
Jesus,
yep,
and and then it became savages, anybody
yep.
who didn't accept Christ, accept
Yeah.
Christianity.
I
Uh,
had this young soldier once. He asked me, he's like, "How do you know who's a bad guy?" I said, "If they're pointing a weapon at you, they're the bad guy.
well, yeah,
Like that. That's
automatically, yeah.
like you have to verify there's a weapon. You
But
know."
here's something that very few people know, and I learned this for the first time. Before the first Crusades armies even reached the Holy Land, mobs of crusaders swept through the Rhine Valley of Germany and massacred entire Jewish communities.
Yep.
And it mentions 4 regions. Um, and so their logic was, we're marching to fight the enemies of Christ. The Jews
Yep.
killed Christ. Why do we have to travel all that far when the enemies of Christ are right in front of us? So the first victims of the first
Yep.
crusade were not Muslims in Jerusalem. They were Jews in Germany.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the church has never really come to grips with that or acknowledged that, or, because the crusades started with a really good idea, right? And but that's what dehumanization does. Just
Hmm.
like you said, Pat, just now, it makes sure that innocent people die because
Yep.
they fit the category. They
That's
fall
it.
into the category.
Well,
So
that's even what um, right here it says one of the biggest black marks, like in my list here. The Fourth Crusade sacked Constantinople, which was a Christian city,
exactly.
and it said that undermines the whole idea that it was purely about defending Christianity.
Well, we'll find this out. By the time the Fourth Crusade happened, it was not at all about Christianity. It was
Right.
about land, and it was about goods, and it was about whatever you could get your hands on. And
Yeah,
there are a lot of reasons for that too. And the church is responsible for sort of fueling that fire as well. But then we go, the moment that you decide that some human beings are less than human, less than image bearers, then you've entered a place where any atrocity becomes possible.
They become disposable.
Yes. Theological error 4, and we just touched on this too. The church speaks for God absolutely.
Mm.
That is a big error.
Hey, I
It,
do want to add a caveat here. I did actually have an encounter with a subspecies of a human.
was
Uh,
it on Double Bridges Road?
it was no, it but no, I'm probably have there. No, this was on Brunswick Road. I was moving a tractor, and I had to get over a little bit for this car to come around me. I met a car, and I was on the road for like maybe 30 seconds right here, And I mean, I'm in a tractor. I get over as far as I can, and they had to ease over about 10 inches. And I think that this woman, if she could have gotten out of her car, I think she would have got out and choked me to death. She was so
Wow.
mad. She
Wow.
literally, I watched her scream, WTF. I could see it. She got right up to me. She didn't get over at all. She throws her hands in the air. She screams WTF, and then she has to ease over and go by me. She didn't even cross the white line
Wow.
to go over. So I'm pretty sure she's a
Yeah.
subspecies.
Less than
Um,
human for sure.
yes,
Yeah.
she is
Yeah.
definitely less than human,
We
but the rest of them, yeah,
we
yeah.
need a crusade right now.
I was honestly ready to lead a crusade after that. I was so fired up.
No doubt.
So,
So the
yeah,
church speaks for God, absolutely. Urban II did not say, we think this is a good cause. He said, God wills it.
Yep.
yeah,
Um, and it, you know, that throws it into a different light, because if God wills it, who are you to object?
yeah,
And
There's
you
no,
know what else is so scary too is all these popes throughout history. They are headstrong. Will go in and destroy a group of people, or at least advocate for it. Go in and say this, but they refuse to be like, "Oh, the guy before me said this, so we're not going
well,
to do that."
and then to say we were wrong is to say God was wrong.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, how about say like I misheard?
Yeah.
Do you think that guy, like, I wonder this, he's essentially leading thousands of men wrongly.
Yeah.
Like, is that, do you think that, because I know the Bible touches on false teachings.
Yes.
I mean, wouldn't that fall into that category? Like that, in my opinion, that judge is going to be judged
Yeah.
harshly for that kind of thing.
Well, not even the enemy. You led a lot of your own people to death too.
Yeah. Well,
Oh,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, he led and
completely.
led a lot of them to believe that they truly were their sins are forgiven because
Yes.
they're fighting this holy war.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm exempt. I have a get out of jail free card because
And think
I'm
about it too.
doing
This is
this.
before the Gutenberg Bible. Like they weren't Bibles weren't just floating around everywhere.
No, no, you got all of your spiritual information, your biblical content from the priest
Yep.
Yeah,
or from the pope.
yeah.
That was it.
And so
But
it gives
here's
them a ton of power.
right, exactly. That's exactly right. When you can speak for God, then you have absolute power. You have absolute sway. But there's a little bit of a shadow side behind this, because there are some mixed motives, kind of hiding in the background. Um, uh, what the Pope actually wanted. Now, he was at the time in a pretty tenuous space himself. He was in a prolonged power struggle with European monarchs who had authority over the church. Now we're not gonna get into this, but it bears mentioning. It's called the investiture controversy. And this was going on at the time, at this particular time. It was a conflict between the church and the state in medieval Europe over the ability to choose and install bishops, abbots of monasteries, and the Pope himself. In other
Mhm.
words, so it began as a power struggle between Pope Gregory VII and Henry IV, who was then king, later was the Holy Roman Emperor. So we got this real intertwining. So the um, the kings and emperors were claiming that they had the power because it was a state church, so they could choose the pope, they could choose the bishops, all this kind of stuff. And so, Pope Urban II was saying, no, it's the church's job to do that. And so it apparently was bubbling under the surface this whole time. Um, Urban had been driven from Rome by a rival pope backed by the Holy Roman Emperor. They said, "You're no longer pope anymore. We got our own pope." But then the church said, "No, he's still our pope," and he's like all this stuff. So if he could mount a successful campaign to regain the Holy Land, it would reestablish his position as the spiritual authority. And I think that's why he leans so heavily on God wills this, because he's throwing all of his cards on the table and saying, if this one comes through, then I am the voice of God. Then these kings and these emperors will shut up and leave me alone. Um, then it would also, at the time, there was constant infighting inside Europe between these
Yep.
bands of marauders and knights, and people trying to take over territory. And so it's like, hey, this is a great way to take all of these, move this conflict out of our country, and unite them around this whole campaign. And now we're gonna, we don't have to put out fires every 5 minutes. And then in his mind, it would potentially reunite the Eastern and Western churches. That was one of his good motives, perhaps. Um, so um, I think I don't think he was just trying to strategize. I think he genuinely believed in the cause, but as a residual effect, he was going to stand to benefit considerably out of it. Then there is the other issue of what the nobles wanted, the knights and the nobles. Um, they had genuine religious devotion. Pilgrimage to Jerusalem was kind of a thing for them. They wanted to liberate the holy places, but they also thought that the promise of full remission of sins was a very good thing.
Right.
They also saw the acquisition of land and wealth. These are some of these knights and nobles. They didn't have an inheritance. They didn't have a retirement plan. And they're going like, okay, well, we can probably take some of that land and kind of have a new start.
And I'll tell you, like, there's a part of me that's like, I don't. That to me is not inherently bad, because you think, and I mean, not saying we should go take this land from them, but the thought to be like, all right, I'm going to go fight in this holy war. I'm going to fight for Christianity, fight for God, and there's the potential that I'll have a place to live or have like my thing. Like I could see where you could rationalize it. Like if you're the guy going to fight this, like, it's like, hey, it's kind of like the icing on the cake, man. I'm going to
They
go
they
fight.
were promised estates back in their countries where they were from.
Well, there was a little bit of both going on there. Um, they whether they were actually going to make good on those promises is very up in the air as far as giving them land in their
Who
homeland.
promised them
Mhm.
that? The church?
Yeah, the Pope, and yeah, it's like they're basically promising them everything. And
Yeah.
here's another thing: is debt relief. Crusaders' debts were suspended while they were on a campaign.
Yep.
Dang, we need to fire that up right now. I need a
That's what I'm
crusade.
saying. but but between the Pope's motives and the nobles' motives, all of this, those motives aren't in themselves necessarily bad. But when you take those theological problems and you trickle them all the way down and you combine them with these motives, then
Mhm.
you're doing the Lord's work. The Pope is speaking for God. We are fighting against non-humans.
Yeah.
Just the whole thing is a big old ball of wow. I mean, that's a lot. But again, it happens very quickly, and there's almost no resistance to it.
And we
Um,
also see the wealth of the church skyrocket during this period.
Completely. Well, in any kind of war conflict, I mean, it, it's
Well,
good
they
for the
tax all the
economy.
countries to go to the war effort, but yet
Absolutely. Yeah,
papacy
absolutely.
gets
You
it
got
built
it.
up.
So this is the wild thing about it. This is when it starts to go off the rails. Because before the official armies of the First Crusade even departed, a separate movement took to the road the People's Crusade, led by a charismatic preacher called Peter the Hermit. I've been called that. That guy never comes out of his office. He stays in
Peter
his cave the whole time.
Hermit.
Peter the Hermit. Yes. In it literally tens of thousands of ordinary people, peasants, minor knights, women, children, set off for Jerusalem with almost no military organization, no supply lines, and no realistic plan. And so what happened was they marched through the Rhine Valley. They attacked and massacred Jewish communities. It's called the Rhineland Massacres of 1096. Killed thousands of people. Then they moved into Hungary and Bulgaria, pillaging Christian communities to feed themselves. And then they got to Anatolia, which is Turkey. They were almost entirely annihilated by Turkish forces at the Battle of Civitate. How about that? And so the fire is lit. And once the fire is lit, it does not necessarily stay contained to its intended target. So now we get to the actual First Crusade, 1099. Um, it was a brutal 3-year march. They get to Jerusalem. They besiege the city for 5 weeks. On July 15th, they breached the walls. And it says here, what followed is one of the most documented atrocities of the medieval period. First, the Crusaders massacred the Muslim population of the city with extraordinary brutality. They herded the Jewish population into the main synagogue and burned it with the people inside. Contemporary accounts written by Crusaders themselves with pride describe the blood running ankle deep in the streets. The Crusaders then went to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the site of Jesus' tomb, and celebrated Mass. They're celebrating the Eucharist, the body and blood of Christ, with the blood of thousands of civilians still on their hands and in the streets outside. That sounds delightful.
I'd say that's a wild combo.
Yeah, I mean, how do we process that? Anybody? I mean,
I have no idea.
Well, that's the saying. Like I said, I'm trying to think of how I could defend it.
I know, because, but it's almost like, it's almost like there was all this religious fervor and all of this, danger, adventure kind of stuff, but there was almost no, there was no succinct plan. Here's what we're going to do when we get there. Here's how we're going to make sure that nobody innocent gets killed, or that it's at a minimum. Here is our goal. Our goal is to, take Jerusalem and then occupy Jerusalem. And, there's just none of that. It's just once they get going, the first drop of blood, they just get that bloodthirst, and it just goes absolutely crazy. So yeah, I mean, if you, I don't know, Logan, how to defend that. I don't know either.
Yeah.
And then let's go take communion.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what to do with that. So then there's 2 centuries of crusading. The first crusade was followed by 7 more major campaigns over the next 2 centuries, and it deteriorated progressively. The second crusade in 1147 ended in humiliating failure, so they lost.
Yep.
The third crusade in 1189, Richard I versus Saladin.
Yep, Richard the Lionheart.
Ended in a negotiated truce. Saladin's treatment of prisoners was notably more humane than the Crusaders. The fourth crusade in 1204 was the most revealing of all. The Crusaders never reached the Holy Land. Instead, this is when they sacked Constantinople, a Christian city, the capital of the Byzantine Empire, the very empire that was supposed to rise up and protect all the Christians.
Right.
They looted its churches, desecrated its holy sites, and installed a Latin emperor.
Yep.
The Eastern and Western churches never fully recovered from that. And then, this is the one I had no idea about, the Children's Crusade in 1212. Thousands of children marched toward the Holy Land. Most died of disease and starvation. Some were sold into slavery. How about that? So God wills it.
Why did they attack Constantinople? Like, what was the reason?
I'm really at a loss. Other than the only thing I can think of is that by then it wasn't about Christianity anymore. It was about
power and everything,
acquiring whatever you can acquire. And I don't know what the deal is with setting up a Latin emperor. The only thing I can think of there is that these were mostly Western Christians, that they just, by that time, they couldn't make the distinction between Christians and non-Christians. It was just us against them, because they set up a Latin emperor. Well, we're gonna join the 2 churches by force. And Lord have mercy, what happened to Jerusalem? Well, Jerusalem's too far. We don't want Jerusalem anymore. So here we go. That's kind of the thumbnail sketch of the latter parts of the Crusades. So in the aftermath, the human cost, who got hurt in the Crusades over the centuries. Number one, the Jewish communities of Europe. It's like, how in the world did they get sucked into this deal?
Yeah.
They it honestly, and you might make a case for this is when the whole anti-Semitic thing just really took fire, because they're just going, now they're enemies of Christ. That religious violence is okay for enemies of Christ.
Was this some of the stuff that would have inspired Hitler?
I think this is playing in the background the whole time, for sure.
Yeah, Hitler was really big into the Byzantine Empire. But another thing, too, a lot of people don't realize is the Fifth Crusades, it wasn't even in Jerusalem.
No.
It was Egypt.
Yeah.
Syria.
That's what I'm talking about. They just kind of lost their compass in the whole thing. And they're sending out these crusades, and they're going, yeah, go fight Muslims and take back the Holy Land. It's like they're fighting everybody but Muslims.
Right.
Like, the Muslims are going like, we don't have to do anything, you know. Um, but the Muslims of the Holy Land took a huge hit, and you might make a case that that's not a bad thing, because they were. You could make a case that they were just as violent in some ways, but I will say that Saladin, the Muslim leader who recaptured Jerusalem in 1187, allowed the Christian population to leave peacefully and largely unharmed. He ransomed many who could not pay their own ransom out of his personal treasury, and his treatment of the conquered stands in stark contrast to what the Crusaders had done in 1099. So, you can view that in many different ways. It's just part of the story that he was not nearly as brutal as his Crusader counterparts. The Eastern Church, of course, was terribly devastated. Um, they lost irreplaceable manuscripts, artworks, and relics. It makes me wonder how many ancient manuscripts of the Bible were stored in some of their storehouses, and maybe that's why we can't, piece together certain, uh, parts of the Bible from the same time period. Um, the Greek Christian population was subjected to violence, rape, enslavement. The schism between the two churches was the chasm of genuine hatred, and um, Eastern Christians, it says, came to regard Western Christians not as brothers but as predators, and that took centuries, literally, to kind of smooth over. Um, the Crusaders themselves took heavy losses.
Mm-hmm.
Of the estimated 100,000 who set out on the first crusade, perhaps 40,000 reached Jerusalem. Many were ruined financially. And this is one thing that's not talked about a lot, but many of the Crusaders who returned had the same kind of severe psychological trauma that we talk about and diagnose today. Um, they had been promised salvation. It was all in the name of God. And at this point, they don't care if their sins were forgiven. It's like that was horrible.
That
Um,
in the in this defense of it here, my list of those,
yeah,
I was looking at these, and this is something that did kind of stand out to me, and it was the original purpose may have had some justification. It was the execution that went wrong.
I,
Um,
and I
but
think that's where we can come to on this, don't you think?
yeah, and you what you just said, especially on the because I think we probably don't think about the mental effects afterwards. And I mean, this war, these guys are coming home from war,
Yeah.
and that's what one of my friends that was in the military, and he told me he was in I guess Iraq or one of those places, and he killed a guy when he was over there, and he told me that he often thinks about it, and he said that they entered this guy's home on a raid, and he said the dude went for an AK, and he said I shot him. He said it was totally justified in war, like that's what we were supposed to do. And he said, but I think about that now. And he's like, I don't even know this guy. He said, if a group of armed men entered my home at night, I'm going to grab a firearm and try to defend my family and myself. And he was like, I think would me and this guy have gotten along? Like he's like, if I had met him under different circumstances, would we have could we have been friends? Like, and so heck, man, I mean, that's liable to be the kind of things that are after the smoke clears. These guys could be, I don't know, that's kind of stuff that might be going through their brains.
Well, here's the wild thing, to get a little bit philosophical, and Pat, you can probably attest to this. Is you have to dehumanize in order to justify, but then when you are up close and personal, there's something inside of us that acknowledges that there are human, and
Oh, for sure.
that's what messes us up, right?
For sure. And sometimes it takes you might witness it right there on the spot, but sometimes it'll be years later.
Right.
It's when everything's quiet,
Yep.
when you can actually reflect.
Because there's something inside of us that's built inside of us when God creates us, that acknowledges and knows that that a human is a human, no matter how bad their actions are. no matter how bad their belief system is. And I imagine that probably messed some people up pretty bad. Because this is supposed to be a holy war. This is supposed to be, all righteous cause, everything else like that. But how about this? Now, Pat, you may or may not have witnessed any of this, but this material about the Vietnam War that I read. One of the things that this soldier was so disgusted by is then watching his fellow soldiers do things, take advantage of the situation and do things that were unspeakable, take things that were, not theirs, literally just, allow their appetites to go wild. And it sickened him, and this is exactly what happened here in these in these crusades.
Yeah.
How would it be to set out with noble intentions, thinking you're going to Jerusalem, and you end up in Constantinople,
Right.
destroying the temple?
Now I'll tell you now. Lucky for me, the group of guys I was with was super good dudes. Like
That's good.
I didn't see that behavior. I saw the mindsets from some people that were like that. Now but talking to some of the senior people had been there longer than us, they definitely saw stuff like that.
Really?
Yeah, and so it's like I said, it's never changed throughout the history of time. Like we see these things, and what's really funny, it's you're like, I know this is going to appeal to Logan. It's by the time the Crusades are winding down, right? They would have kept going, but the movie Braveheart, right? All right, Edward Longshanks would have joined the war to go do a new Crusades if he wasn't in war with the French and invading Scotland.
Yeah.
Really? I
Mhm.
guess I didn't know about that.
And at that point, Edward Longshanks had the most powerful army in the world.
Wow.
Good old French, man.
Yep.
So
Thank you for the French showing up finally.
Yeah, Pope Nicholas the fourth, something like that. I was trying to get him to help.
So let's get into, just for the last just a little segment here. How do we then? And again, like I said, we need to, and we're allowed to, and we should critique the church whenever the church goes off the rails, because clearly, church went off the rails. It's very, very possible and probable that they started out with, yeah, we're going to defend our Christian brothers. Nothing wrong with that. But I think there is. Let's just ask it this way: what could they have done differently in order to actually come closer to achieving their objective?
I would say start off in the right direction.
Well, that would be good. Yes. But their first crusade, they actually got there, and they actually conquered the city.
Not killing the Jews and the Germans and stuff on the way out. Like
yeah.
And it's funny. So and I know this for a fact, is even back then they had what's ROE. They had rules of engagement. Okay, and to break rules of engagement back then, you got beheaded.
Yes.
And so true. This was, let's do it. Like it was free for all for everybody. It was like a bloodlust almost type deal.
That's kind of the feeling that I get. But how could they have prevented that very thing, where it was just almost destined to go off the rails from the very beginning?
I don't know, man. Because if you're
never introduced violence to begin with, would be probably the only way, wouldn't it?
Well, if you're pulling the tank out of the driveway and you run over 6 kids and you're like, it's all right, it's part of war, and keep going, I think you already got the problem wrong there.
Yeah,
I agree. What I've always wondered is, with all the power that the Pope had and all that kind of stuff, could they have not made this a government issue? Could they not have appealed to? Well, I guess part of the problem was the Pope and the emperors were so intertwined and at odds with each other that to request the government's help and the official military's help would be to admit weakness, or to try to, the government already wanted to take over the religious aspect of the church, and that's to draw them into their territory even further. So it's almost as if the church felt like they had to handle it on their own, which, golly, that seems like just a very dangerous thing. It's so they they had to. I mean, Pope Urban had to basically draw the voice of God into this whole thing
Yeah.
in order to begin to make it work. Um, so let let's ask this other question: um, when violence is advocated by the church, and when the church is given political power, is that always a bad combination?
That's a hard question. I would venture to say with the political power, I mean, my instinct is to probably say that is probably a bad deal.
I would say it's situational,
It might be.
but that's a dangerous combination.
Well,
Um,
here's what I'm thinking, and this is a scenario that just popped in my head. And I'm curious if y'all think this would be bad or good. If let's say that the church sent a group of missionaries to this tribe, and
With bombs.
they're with yes, with bombs. You're going to either convert or we're going to blow you up. No, that but they do. They send a let's say they send a group in, and the tribe basically becomes hostile to them and kidnaps them.
Yeah.
And they're holding them armed. They're like maybe they've tortured and killed some of them, and they're going to do this to the rest of them. What if the church, like, you know, let's cut out all of the DHS, all the different government organizations. Let's say the church is like, we got to rescue our brothers and sisters that have been kidnapped. Would you say it's wrong if they were like, we're going to get some guys and we're going to go rescue our guys, and they sent in some dudes from the church with guns to get them people out of there, and they go and they had to kill some of those tribesmen to rescue the missionaries? What would you say in that? What in that scenario? Or is that justified or not?
you
And
asking me?
let's say, hey, I'm asking both of you, and let's say we keep it. They keep it totally mission focused. There's no extra taking of anything. They literally go in and they only kill. Maybe they even only kill one or two. They're like just hell bent on stopping them, and they're managed to get them out of there. That I'm curious y'all's thoughts. Are they
I
justified or not?
My opinion would be, yeah, that's justified. But again, it's not necessarily just the action of; it's the action afterwards. Because we saw the first crusade with the control of Jerusalem, right? Now we supposed to be these big people of peace. The war's over, like you won. Now why was peace not established back then? After they won,
Yeah, that's a good question. Did but did they really accomplish what they set out to do? Even though I mean, obviously they seized control of the city, but did they advance the cause of Christ? Did they?
not at all.
Well, no. I mean, in my opinion, I'd say, like you said, this is a reoccurring black eye on the faith. People today, 1,000 years later, still bring, oh yeah, killing in the name, yeah, you just killing in God's name, like that. So, I mean, I would say no, it did not advance the word.
Well, um, and it's an interesting scenario that you bring up with the missionary thing, because I think because it reminds me of the story of Jim Elliot and Elizabeth Elliot, who were missionaries to these cannibalistic tribes and everything, and the tribe did kill Mr. Elliot. Elizabeth went back years later to evangelize them and was successful in doing so. Um, and it's such a I don't if the missionaries were legit in captivity, so on and so forth, I think that probably what we would do is appeal to our government, and they would send in their special forces and liberate them. It's probably the way it would go. I think if if we got three mega churches together and they got a bunch of guys with a bunch of rifles and everything, I don't think the government would enjoy that. I don't think they would take well to that, because it's like, no, it's our job. We that's what we do.
See, all right. So let me add one more layer to that.
Okay.
Okay, let's say that a group of us from the church get there's unreached people,
Okay.
and we're going to go start a church in this area.
Like Guilt Edge or something like that?
Yeah, yes, yes, yeah, right off the double bridges.
Yeah, exactly.
But like, let's say, and so this is not in the United States. So we
Okay.
don't have, again,
Yeah.
we don't have
We're
any
not
government
citizens.
help.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're on our own,
All right.
and same boat. We send out some people from the church then. So it is the only help that these missionaries got is whatever we got at the church. So in that scenario, you got we can't plead to the United States like, man, send in somebody to rescue these people. They're either going to die or somebody from the church is going to go and rescue them. What do you think then? I mean, and I want to be sure and add in, like, some of the people that go to rescue them have to, in the exchange, they end up killing some of the tribes people. Is that justified? Like, that is just something, that's a scenario I'm just thinking. Because I'm kind of with Pat here. I'm like, man, I don't know. I feel like to rescue them, they're not like blood, like going out for blood. It's like we're literally just going to try to rescue our brothers and sisters. And I don't know. So I'm curious, Peter, what do you think?
I just again think it's very complicated because obviously the idea is to plant the church there and to preach the message of Jesus.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, if they, I would hope that some sort of action could be taken because I would not want to see, our brothers and sisters, just be hung out to dry.
Yeah.
Right.
But I don't know how the real ethical way of going about that is.
Yeah.
I,
Write
I'm,
Bible verses on the bullet tip. I mean,
I mean, if it was that kind of situation, and if there really are, lone rangers out there, I would hope they'd have their own firearms. Honestly, is what I
yeah,
would hope, in
yeah.
case something happened. But um, I, I
It's a
think that
hard scenario.
it
It
is,
is.
and it kind of comes down to conversation we've had before about, is self defense always okay?
Yeah.
And I don't think that, we talked about violence and all that kind of stuff. I don't think the Bible teaches against self defense. I
Yeah.
don't.
I would not say the best thing to do is go in and murder everyone on the island or
That's a
whatever
good
the place
point.
is.
That's a good point.
But
Yeah. Hmm.
if prime example, let's say our wives, our kids, are some of the people taken. At that point, it's okay. I have to protect my family.
Yeah.
I have to do what I can do. You
Absolutely.
know,
I might
and
go Crusader on them if they took my wife and children.
Yeah.
But
well, if there's
my
like
morals
like
probably
two,
fail.
if there's like five ladies out there peeling coconuts or something, I'm not going to murder them on the way in. Like it's
Yeah.
like it's
What a visual. Yeah.
yeah, you got to be rational about stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And here's the deal too: is depending on kind of how you feel about this, that, or the other, you can make up a scenario that makes it complicated for one argument or another argument.
Right.
Because you can say, well, do you not trust God? Do you not think that God's purposes will be accomplished no matter what? Uh, so I don't
Of
know.
course, God's purpose will be done. He put me here, and I have this gun.
That's
Yeah,
God
what I'm
put the
saying.
right
Yeah. How do you
person in
know?
this place.
Yeah. That's like the dude that's on his roof or whatever,
I
on the
know,
flood.
and
Yeah.
praying for rescue.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Rescue.
God says, "I sent you a helicopter and two boats. What do you want?" I know, I know, I
Yeah.
know.
No, and
Um,
like I said, that's just, I would actually really like to hear our listeners' thoughts on that.
I
Uh,
would too. I absolutely would,
yeah.
because it does get very complicated. And again, if we go back to their original motive, all of the sub motives aside,
Yeah.
the original motive, I don't think was a bad motive. I would
Would
like.
you say that this was kind of the birth of the Christian nationalist?
Well, yes. We're going to do an episode on that. We're just going to just sort of unpack it a little bit and stay very, very Switzerland, very neutral on everything, because again, um, there are extreme sides to all of this, and we're not interested in the extremes. Honestly, the most rebellious position is usually to try to take the middle ground in between the two
That's
extremes,
true.
because the extremes are
Usually
easy,
get some of the
you know.
most hate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and but yes, I do believe, and honestly, one of the reasons I wanted to start with Crusades is because um, in this whole nationalist movement, and it's not just American Christian nationalism. It's
Yeah.
bubbling up in plenty of other countries as well. Um, and and there's a lot of sentiment right now that not only were the Crusades great and we should do them again, but also things like slavery and the relegating women to their place and not allowing them to vote. These are all really good ideas in some of the more extreme camps of this sort of nationalist movement. And again, you might say, well, would why would we not want to have a Christian-run country? I'm not opposed to that. It would make my job a whole lot easier, you know.
Well, I again, kind of like the Crusaders out there. How many people want to do things in the name of God without knowing the Word of God?
Well, and also, can you? This is where it gets complicated for me, just theologically. Can you do the work of Jesus and ignore the words of Jesus?
As long as you say Amen at the end of it, I guess you can.
That's where it gets really complicated to me, because honestly, we've been over this territory enough. It's like
Mhm.
Jesus said, "Love your enemies, pray for those who persecute." Yes, he said that. Yes, he meant that. Does that mean that? And he said, turn the other cheek. All this stuff. Uh, does that mean we are relegated to be doormats, and that anybody who wants to take our property and kill us can do that? That's not what he's getting at. And
Well, I mean, the whole idea of fighting for the Holy Land, the Holy
that's
Kingdom.
yeah, that's where it gets.
Jesus even said, "My
Mhm.
kingdom is not of this earth."
Yeah, yeah. And honestly, yeah, we can get into the whole land theology and everything else like that, because basically Jesus declared that the promised land is the globe.
Yeah,
It's
I
not
mean, just
relegated to
because I
one.
go kick in the door on the White House three doors down does not mean Donald Trump's in there.
Yeah,
You know,
no,
like
no, no,
it
yeah,
just makes no sense.
yeah. So these are the questions that I wrestle with. Another question that I wrestle with is, does power always corrupt a religious institution, or specifically Christianity? When Christians gain power, or when power is given, does that always corrupt? Is there a scenario in time where it didn't?
I love the phrase "power corrupts" and absolute power corrupts absolutely,
Yeah,
and I think that's where I land on it. Anyways, the more power you give someone, the more we've talked about this. You know, when people have this self reliance, this power, this wealth, this influence, it's kind of like, what do I need to be told what to do anymore? I'm the one who says,
yeah,
Well,
you know, to do
what,
this.
what did Uncle Ben say, man? With great power comes great responsibility.
it's true. It
So,
is absolutely true. But again,
But always is a very
well, that's what I was gonna say. I don't
I
know. I
can't
don't know
say
if I can
always.
say always, because there's the like optimistic side of me wants to think that there's at least one time that like
Look.
some
I'm gonna
Christian
pull
got
the I'm
power
gonna
and
pull
was good.
the I'm gonna pull the magic eight ball answer is outcome likely.
I think that's probably a pretty good way to put it. But it reminds me of when we went through all of the denominations, and
Hmm.
how many there are and why they
Hmm.
are different. In almost always, it comes down to, we have the power. We're going to tell you what to do, and then it's like, no, you're not going to tell me what to do, because I'm reading the Bible different, and so we're going to go establish our own power base over here. And then we got into the cults.
Hmm.
I mean, what happens? How does this degrade? Well, it's when this one central figure is given all of this power, and all of a sudden it's a compound, and all of a sudden I'm hearing straight from God, and it's like it. I think on one level, earthly power corrupts anybody. I I just think you have to be absolutely super careful with it.
See, that's very interesting because we see the Knight Templar go from fighting crusades to becoming Knights of the Prairie. to becoming Freemasons to becoming secret societies to becoming fringe cults. We see that watering down effect as it goes on.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and I'm not suggesting to any degree. I honestly, I don't know the spiritual condition of every president that we've ever had. But I think the idea of having a president who is a genuine Christian person, who exhibits I just think the idea of that is a really good idea.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, I'll
is
tell you
it?
the way that I was kind of put this before, like wrestling with that kind of thought is, all right, all three of us are obviously Christian. Would when you think of a culture that you would say, if any culture had to influence the United States, would you rather it be Christian culture, Buddhist culture, Muslim culture, atheist culture? Which culture would you prefer to influence the country? And I would venture to say all of us would say Christianity. And it's like, and if you wouldn't say that, then it's like, well, then what culture do you think is better? And if you do think it's better, why aren't you following that culture or that belief? And so that's kind of the one way I look at it. But it's one of the tricky parts with like the Christian nationalism to me is, like you just said, we've got like 1,000 denominations. I
I
mean,
know.
even
Yeah.
amongst Christianity, we can't agree. So
That's right.
then it's like,
Well,
okay, and I will say, like, one of the pushbacks on, because I still have a vague understanding really of Christian nationalism,
Yeah, I'm
but
not well versed on it myself.
no, but
well,
I do know it does not, like, a lot of you've got the extreme that when you say Christian nationalism, they mean you got to be a Christian, you got to
Yeah,
be a professing Christian. But like the more moderate Christian nationalists would say, we're not forcing the religion upon you, but our values are instilled in the nation. And like that's kind of what our system is going to operate within. That's kind of the gist I've gotten from it.
do you think every president from the turn of the 20th century has been godly?
No, I would doubt it.
no,
All right, but yet every one of them, when they take the oath of office, they
I
got to
know.
put their hand on a Bible.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the only reason why they do that is to shut the Christian community up.
Well, and I mean, the Christian voters are by far the most powerful segment of
Mhm.
voters, demographic in our nation, anyway. Here's
So
my
what
other.
I'm
Here's
what
the.
I was going to say is what I'm getting at is we can all sit here and say, well, it's a Christian nation. We put our hand on the Bible, blah blah. Just because you go through the motion doesn't mean I'm
No,
buying it.
no, because and that leads me right into my final question, probably. Um, I think it's a great idea to have a Christian president, a Christian governor, Christian senators, House, representatives, everything. I think it'd be great. But does that solve the whole problem?
Nope.
Is that the magic bullet that makes us all more Christian?
No.
That the interesting thing is the fastest growing churches in the world are in the most oppressive governments.
I was thinking about that as you were saying that. I remember because isn't it like Africa? Isn't Africa one of the fastest growing?
Iran and China,
Yep, those are the two.
communist and Sharia law.
Yeah.
And of course, south of south of the equator, Africa and South America, Christianity is
Exploding.
yeah, it's just it's really really growing.
Yeah.
But so we're talking about extreme oppression and extreme poverty. That's where Christianity is flourishing. We are the most Christian nation of all the nations, and the church is literally struggling mostly from apathy.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
and here's the thing that I think too is as wonderful as I think it is to have Christian leaders. Oftentimes we can kind of then abdicate our own responsibility and say, well, the government's doing it for us, just like our economy, just like our creature comforts, just like our, all this stuff. As long as we got a Christian leader, then my family's going to be fine.
Yeah.
When in reality, it should not be as much of a question as to do we have a Christian president or governor. It's what's happening in my own house.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do I have a Christian home? Because honestly, the best way and the most permanent way to have a Christian nation is to have more and better Christians in the nation.
That's it.
You think about this: if we had the majority of our population in the United States professing and active and really on fire Christians, the whole dynamic would just change by itself.
Oh yeah,
You know, and sure, it's great to have Christian leaders because we don't. And I think probably the pushback over the last 10 years has been, well, the other side is so against Christianity
Yeah.
that it really makes things that much more difficult with all of the liberal policies and all this stuff. And I totally agree with that. I don't buy into any of that stuff. And,
Right.
but also, uh, I I can teach my children well inside my home, no matter what kind of stuff is going on out there. Um, I don't have to be afraid of the boogeyman, coming in. And
Yep.
if I'm leading well and I'm teaching my children well, and our church is flourishing and doing the things that we're supposed to do as the church, it's less important that we organize crusades to go get the bad guys, and it's more important that we develop a flourishing community where our
Hmm.
children can grow up in safety and peace and understanding of the way of Jesus. And so that's
That's
kind
right.
of that's kind of my bottom line, I shall say. And but on the other hand, I think it's really important for us to always evaluate and critique the church. How is the church handling this and that and the other, and not be afraid to say, we're kind of missing it on this one.
Yeah.
And so in the next few weeks, we'll go to more modern sort of expressions of this whole idea, where the church, just kind of, you know, and we'll do that too. So, um, but what's your final word on this, Pat? What were the Crusades?
Uh, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe it's just as simple as that.
You
Uh,
know,
Lo-
yeah, I think that's where I'm gonna land with it.
what about you, Logan?
I would agree. I really do think that I would think maybe not. I don't know about the Pope for sure, but you know, I think that there was probably a lot of good intention. I think that there was. You could make the argument that there was good intent. I think it was executed extremely poorly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I would kind
And
of.
I think both of your perspectives on that they're honestly very gracious. I think you could probably again sway on one side or the other of that. I think that's a
Mhm.
fair take. I think it's a fair take.
Yeah.
Um, my sort of take on the Crusades specifically is kind of the same perspective I have on some of the things that have happened over the centuries and some of the things that are happening now. I think that it gets dangerous whenever you attach "God wills it" to
Yeah.
anything. Um, we know we don't know everything that God wills, but we do know a few things. God wills to redeem every human being. God wills for us to walk according to the Spirit, not according to the flesh. Those are God will things. When we say God wills us, and we'll probably get into colonialism at some point,
Yeah.
because God wills us to go take this land because there are savages living on it who need Jesus. And by the way, there's lots of sugar cane, and you
And
know,
it's funny you say that too. It's funny as God wills things like Waco,
yeah,
Elktown.
you
You
can
know,
you can track through all of our back content
yeah,
and find out
and
where
and
that
I
went
think
wrong when
and
you.
I agree with you. Is we just need to be very very cautious, and it's because it is dangerous. It is
Yeah,
dangerous.
and I think that power is a very very dangerous thing, especially for any kind of religious movement, if you will, because it just activates that human side of us that
Right.
that I can take control. And I think it steers us away from, if we're not careful, relying on God for everything that He wants to give us. So
Yeah.
those are I think that is really at the heart of it, and I don't think that heart has really gone away. I think it still exists, and I think it exists in the name it claim it movements and the Kenneth Copeland movements and the all the stuff. It's all kind of right there. How many jets do I have and how many mansions do I have and all this stuff. So So anyway, that's kind of where we are. Tell us what you think about the Crusades. What do you know about the Crusades that we didn't have a chance to cover? What details did we leave out? What are they really? Were they really noble? Should we do them again? Are they detestable and should be avoided altogether? I would be really interested for you to weigh in on this, especially as we get into more, critiquing the church that we are a part of and that we love, and we want to keep in our own lane. So there you
Hey,
go.
taking a 400 or 500 year period and fitting it into an hour and a half, I think we did all right.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
I think we did good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks for going on this little journey with us here. We certainly didn't cover all of this stuff about the Crusades, but it hopefully will spark some thoughts and conversations as we go forward. So make sure and hit all the buttons. Hit all the buttons. Leave all the reviews.
Do
And
it.
if you have any nasty emails to send, it's lhanks.
Yes, send them to me. Send them to me. I'll write a nasty one right back to you.
Logo
Yes.
Crusade right to you.
I'll tell them myself, when I was talking about the subspecies human that I did meet in the
yes,
road,
exactly.
I did probably return a hand gesture back to her.
That one, right?
You
Yes.
launched your own personal crusade, didn't you?
I did. I told
Yes,
her
I
she
love
was
it.
number one. As she
Number one in all categories.
That's
Yes.
right.
Mhm. All right, everybody. Leave us those comments and reviews and all the stuff. And we love doing this. And we love that you're along with us. So join us next week when we get into some more stuff.
Yep. See you.
See you.